Okay, so it seems that we are live. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining for joining us today. I think we chose the hardest topic of the year, top metrics every CMO actually cares about in social media reporting, and it's quite a match with what's happening in this period where everyone is talking about social media reporting, budgeting, and planning the next year. I am here today together with Melissa Downson, Senior Corporate Social Media Manager at Western Digital. Melissa has an experience of has a 15 years experience in social media, influencers, and digital marketing. She worked with diverse range of brands across industry, including tech, finance, healthcare, fitness, and nonprofit. Also, Kate Winnick is with us today. She is a social media director and a marketing leader with experience in digital content strategy, building and executing multi-channel social media programs, branding and sponsored content, and community growth and management. Maya Shell, social media manager at Quill, helping businesses go from barely posting to building real communities using Beckett and creative content and storytelling. And Ryan Quinder, social media manager at Zapier, with a focus on managing social media strategy and engagement to connect with Zapier enterprise customers. So welcome everyone. How are you?
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Doing great.
Okay, before to jumping into this subject, I need to share some internal things with you. I think we'll be live around 45 minutes, and whenever you have an idea or want to or have a questions, you can use the chat that we have right here in our Zoom live session. So yeah, we were discussing in the backstage about the fact that it's kind of this live session is kind of match between what's happening these days in the social media world and the topic that we choose. I had a lot of discussions, and today was a pretty rocky discussion about the social media initiatives in the next year, and the board meeting asked me what's the ROI. So okay, yeah, the plan looks pretty nice, but how can we correlate these initiatives to the business impact? So I think everyone from time to time has the same challenge, how to prove the social media ROI and how to prove that what you are doing and the effort that you are doing generates impact to the business overall. And we are going to deep dive in how we can correlate the organic efforts, but also in the paid. For some social media managers, the paid one can be much easier. The challenging part is how can we correlate the organic efforts to the business overall. So yeah, don't be shy, ask us questions because it seems that we have the same struggles, and I'm pretty sure that my guests today have a lot of experience in how they proved their efforts to the social media, to the upper management and the social media directors and so on. So yeah, I will start with the first question. Actually, the first question that I have is, from your experience, what are the top 3 metrics CMO actually care about, and why those? Kate, would you like to join us?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I was thinking about this question, I think the answer to all of these to some degree is always going to be it depends. But I would generally break it down into 3 categories depending on your business, which is going to be some attribution signal, some competitive signal, and some engagement signal. So, for example, I was when I was at Peloton, I remember I sat on a panel with a woman who worked at EOS Lip Balm, and they had a product that you can sell sort of fairly easily. It's low cost. It's something that people buy frequently. It's sort of an impulse purchase. And so she was able to track actual sales metrics. I sold a product that was much more expensive, and now I'm in B2B where the sales cycle is much longer and much more complicated. So even if direct sales isn't something that you're able to attribute to social, some kind of attribution metric, like you're tracking, email captures or downloads of a valuable asset that you know is used in the sales process, something like that is always valuable to a CMO. Um, Maybe for your competitive business, share of voice is what really matters to them. Or if there's a particular competitor that you're focused on beating, understanding how your audience compares to theirs can be valuable. And then the engagement signal, could be anything from standard social engagement metrics and understanding how followers are engaged to kind of the post-level metrics of reaching new followers, and kind of watch time, dwell time, things like that. So it depends on your business, but attribution, competition, and engagement, I think, are sort of the three big buckets that you want to make sure you're filling when you are reporting to leadership.
Yeah, and I think also attribution is quite challenging. I can share something that is happening to us here at Social Insider. Every customer that subscribed to our product, they had to answer to the question, where did you heard about us? And 10% of them are mentioning social media. But when I'm looking at when I'm looking at what they did overall before subscribing, it seems they visited some pages on our website, but also, and some of them they came directly. So they type our brand name in Google, for example, and then scrolling 5, 7 pages on our website, and then replying in our survey, in our interview, that social media was top of mind for them. So the question that I always got from the upper management is, it seems that social media is a touch point for them, but it wasn't, it's not enough.
Mhm.
What we are communicating and what is on our website overall, it's also important for them. So that's why we cannot remove what we do on our blog, for example, with the report that we create, and focusing only on and attributing these clients only to social media. It seems that sometimes it's part of the story. Social media, it's important for them because maybe it was top of the funnel, but before deciding if Social Insider is what they need, they had multiple touch points with our product. And if we can mention some metrics that are not important for the CMOs, and we can exclude them from the reporting, which one should we exclude, Melissa?
Yes. So, we've just talked about the metrics that CMOs do care about. That was a great answer, Kate. And I just took notes of that. Thank you. As far as the metrics that CMOs probably don't care about, again, everything is always depends. Every CMO is different. But what I've noticed is that CMOs don't care about the metrics that don't ladder up to their goals. So, um, that's like the first step in deciding what metrics to report on is what are your CMOs high level marketing goals, and deciding what metrics to go along with it. But some examples of ones that I've seen that are not the ones that CMOs probably don't care about, are the ones that we as social media professionals think about all the time for content optimization, like saves and shares and video views and like these micro engagements that mean a lot to the algorithm and mean a lot to us as social media managers creating the content. We're proud of it. We want to see different ways people engage with it, but at a really high level, which is where the CMO is sitting, those probably don't matter as much to them. Another thing that I have found is so engagement rate as a high level metric. A lot of CMOs do care about that. I care about that. But one thing that I caution people to think about is engagement rate per post. If you're talking like engagements over impressions, because you could have a post that's got 100 impressions and 10 engagements, and that's a 10% engagement rate, and compared to another post that is maybe has 100,000 impressions and 9% engagement rate. In a report, I would personally probably put that one higher up than the one that got the 10% engagement rate. So thinking about putting these metrics into context is going to help you better report to your marketing leadership.
Yeah, and it's part of the story. So if
Exactly.
those metrics help you create a story for that month or for that quarter or for that year, add the metrics that are important for that specific story. And what signals tell a CMO whether social is contributing to a business growth or not? Ryan?
Yeah, I actually will piggyback a little bit off of Melissa's answer because I thought that was fantastic. And something for me that I've been leaning into a lot, I'll admit that this is a little bit more relevant on LinkedIn. But you'll see why in a sec. But I think like for me, it's so often about the who and not the what in terms of tracking. So I have found that when I switched from tracking things like impressions, even follower growth, etc., and actually started giving much shorter, simpler briefs on who is engaging with our product, especially when the ICP is clear. So I have found that for me personally, shifting almost entirely to focusing on here are the ICP accounts and here are the leaders from those accounts who are engaging with our content, and here's what they're engaging with. I find that folks are a lot more interested in that, and more people across the company are more interested in that than some of the more obvious metrics, which we have on hand and are happy to share. But I have found that actually there's a certain benefit to updating less and focusing on certain things that'll really grab people's attention.
Okay. Do you have or can you share how do you track these ICPs?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're using, and I don't mind giving them a free plug because they've been amazing for us. We're actually using a tool called Ordinal today that just automatically pushes all of the like the LinkedIn data. Previously, we were using like a whole mixture of third-party tools to try and enrich that data. And when I say like that data, I mean like I want the LinkedIn profile so that I can say here's the person who was engaging, or even better would be an email, right? And for us, we're so event focused, especially virtual event being a fully remote company. And so for us, using a lot of what our social is doing is pushing towards those events. So oftentimes what we end up really tracking are looking at the event attendees and signups, and are those ICP, and then looking at the folks who are engaging with our executive content and with our brand content and seeing if those are ICP. And I've built all of this out in Zapier as just a really simple, like an automated way to sort of notify us if ICP folks are engaging with our content. So that's how we're able to track that. And I'm able to answer questions like, who likes the most content? Who's engaged with this topic the most? And I find that those are very actionable questions that often leadership is coming to, and are typically a little bit more relevant than, our comments up or down this month, because that doesn't really inform an action for the executive. And that's why I really want to come back to what Melissa was saying, which is when reporting on these things, always think about how this ladders up to an action that they could take, or a lesson that they could learn, something that makes it incredibly hyper relevant to them. So in this case, their peers who are engaging with Zapier's content that maybe they should be talking to, and if so, about what?
Yeah. It makes sense. And if we have to connect the social results to business objectives, the pipeline, revenue, retention, what is the best way? Mia?
Yeah, so Ryan, that was so good. I was taking notes on that. I think that's such a unique strategy. So I'm gonna be mulling that over my brain. But I feel like we've been saying, like it all depends on what the company's goals are and what the execs want from their side, what is helping them reach their own goals at the end of the day. They're looking for information from you to add to their own reports to whoever they need to report to at the end of the day. So making sure you're following what they need and pulling that down into what you need to find and pulling out that information. So like at Quill, I'll just tie it to kind of like real world examples of like how our team's been kind of doing that. Like when I joined their team, it was kind of like social was just something kind of for fun, but we really, really wanted to start adding to the whole omni-channel effect, and we all want it to be a part, like an actual new revenue pulling in channel. So there was a lot of pressure and stress on it. So we had to get kind of, down to what we actually want to be showing them to say, hey, this channel is working. So some of those things at the like business level that I've seen have a light shined on them right now, or acquiring new customers. Like I said, it's kind of like a new channel. So those kind of things go hand in hand. And they're looking for that in follower growth, which I think a lot of social media managers would be like, I don't know if that really correlates, but if that's what they want to see, okay, we'll put it on there for a goal. But maybe how, in other ways we can prove that as well. So that's something in my brain I'm working on right now. Obviously, most companies care about revenue a lot, so how you can do that, which I think there's so many, we haven't really gotten into it yet. I'm really curious about what the rest of the panelists have to say about it, but how it's so hard to get conversion attributed back to social because there's so many touch points and ways they can go do it or hear about it through social and then end up on the site and possibly buy. And so it's hard to attribute it always. So I feel like it's a maze to try to figure out how to connect all of that together at the end of the day. But some ways that I'm trying to do that is through UTM parameters, obviously having some things in there, and last touch metrics. So if they come to the website, their last touch was from Instagram or something. Trying to find ways to measure all of that, which when I've worked at smaller companies, that's been really hard to do, but working at some bigger companies, it's definitely more feasible. So I get you if you're at a smaller company and you're like, my team doesn't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that because it's definitely really tricky to figure out. And then one of the last things that like our like main company has a really big focus on that kind of in my brain, like trying to figure out how to help them reach that goal or what I can bring to the table to say we're helping, get to that goal. They're really working on their branding and like redefining it and figuring out, new slogans or like really targeting like new ICPs and stuff. So it's actually a super interesting time to work at a company that's kind of redefining the brand, and social, as we know, is a huge indicator of brand and what connects with people and what resonates. So we're kind of trying to use that as a tool as well. So trying different messages, trying to, kind of target a little bit of different people and seeing who's really responding to it. So there's a lot that we're doing in that with like A/B test and boosting certain things and seeing what's happening. So kind of just through a lot of like real world application at like how to kind of look at problems from like what the company wants and then how you can kind of try to get that through social. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about that. But that's why I'm like, I'm sat here for this session too, to hear like how you guys do everything because it's so difficult at the end of the day. So
Super quickly, Maya, I just want to say we've been saying something internally about social and marketing, but specifically social becoming proactive versus reactive. Because I think that as an industry, social is typically something happens, let's react, let's share out
mm,
about it, etc. Whereas nowadays, I feel like it's becoming much more of like, go meet with data, meet with sales, figure out how we can become more of the process. Anyway, that really resonated with me.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, thanks for adding that in.
Yeah, I did a research on some initiatives that we have, and usually SaaS businesses focus a lot in this year and also in the next year. One of them is founder brand, and I discussed with Chad to give me some insights on how can prove that this initiative is working and what metrics should I correlate with the business. So in the case of founders brand, it seems that it's reduced the time, the sales cycle, for example. So um, we can choose to view this initiative through this point of view. So sharing insights and being active as founders on LinkedIn, it seems that build trust with our ICP, and our ICP is more convinced to buy and try Social Insider after repeatedly interacted with our founder content on LinkedIn. The other thing that I also researched was social media influencer, because LinkedIn it seems to be powerful for the B2B space. And what I discovered is that we can look at projects with social media influencers as we look at social media ads, for example. So I have a budget for ads on LinkedIn. I can choose to switch that budget to social media influencers and see what cost of acquisitions rates I get through the campaign with social media influencer compared to social media ads. So it depending on what what metrics and what metrics would you like to influence with that campaign that you are starting, you can choose one specific metrics and have a story around that metric. But it's pretty, I think, in our case with founders brand and founders content, I'm pretty sure that I won't see results from the day one. I think it will be 3 months of iterating how to create content and what content resonates with our ICP as a founder, and then see some results. And Kate, you mentioned when we discussed in the beginning about metrics that CMO cares and they want to see in their reporting, competition was important for them. What mistakes social media managers make when showing benchmark reporting to leadership?
I think the biggest mistake would probably be including metrics that sound impressive, but that don't really matter to executives. Like, I think there's always, to me, the place to do that is your resume, not your reporting. Um, I think there are things like you see this a lot in like big growth percentages. So like, I'm all for plucking the low-hanging fruit in a strategy, but like if your executives have not been posting at all to LinkedIn before, the first year that you have them post to LinkedIn, you're going to see a 400% growth in reach. That's great, and that's a fun number to get to say, but that's literally just you doing your job. It's not necessarily a meaningful measure of a successful strategy. So I think it's making sure that you're highlighting metrics that actually have some meat to them, and that you're doing that with some discernment, and you're able to really both explain and justify the reason for choosing the numbers you're reporting as well as the numbers themselves.
Yeah. And how what's the ideal reporting? How often we should report to the CMO? It's a weekly report, it's a monthly report, it's a quarterly report.
I mean, anyone else is welcome to chime in. I will never do a weekly ever. I think it's too much information. Things change too quickly. It's too volatile. Like, it's and also like unless you have a truly viral moment, you're also not showing a lot of progress week to week. And I think it creates some fatigue with that information. Like I think when you I mean I can yeah, I think Ryan's point there is great. Like if you have a quick win, awesome, share it out. Like drop it right in Slack. But there's no need to deliver a full formal week over week report. Even like if I really truly had full control, I would probably do monthly reporting to my own team and to my sort of immediate stakeholders, and leadership reporting probably on a quarterly basis. Because I think if you consider all of the information that a CMO has to take in at any given moment and all of the factors they're considering, unless social is like one of the core sale drivers of what you're doing, which I think in B2B it really isn't in most cases. Like in that case, what they need to be aware of are trends. They need to be aware of shifts in the algorithm, shifts in the audience, and everything else can kind of be dealt with as needed. But you need a couple of data points to put together that like, okay, yes, like we saw our reach steadily decline over the summer, and like now we seem to have rebounded. That's going to take 4 or 5 months to tell that story. And so if you're reporting on a weekly basis,
Yeah.
sorry, there's going to be a lot of weeks where A, you're just reporting bad numbers, which nobody's excited about, and you're reporting bad numbers that don't necessarily point to really bad outcomes in aggregate. Like you can have a number of bad weeks and still hit all your annual goals and still grow in a way that's really beneficial to the business. So I'm a fan of less frequent less frequent comprehensive reporting and more real-time quick win updates that help to keep people updated and that kind of share out as needed insights. And I think it's again like we're talking about CMO reporting in this conversation, but there's lots of other stakeholders who need your reporting on a different cadence. Your creative team should be able to get an update on what's working visually and what's not much more frequently than quarterly. But it's not, there may be people who want to test something on social and they may need results after just a couple of weeks. But as far as big roll-up executive reporting, I think less is more.
Yeah, yeah. And when it comes to weekly, we also have a chat where we share the wins that we got on weekly or monthly and so on. So,
Weekly, daily, whatever works for you. I hope you have a win every day.
yeah, 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 yeah. Okay. Melissa, what's the one thing every social media manager could do immediately to make their reporting better?
I have actually two things. But they kind of tie in together. But number one, we kind of touched on this a little earlier, but telling a story, telling a narrative with your reporting, the biggest mistake I see social media managers, and not just social media managers, a lot of people in the marketing space will do is just report on numbers, just flat numbers, without giving any kind of key insights, any kind of thought to it, any kind of recommendations. You want to take those numbers and turn it into a story. You want to point out what went well, what made your maybe challenges are, and then take that and round it out with your recommendations, because at the end of the day, you are the subject matter expert in social media. Your CMO is not only not likely not a subject matter expert in social, but they're also way too busy to take your numbers and try to do something with it and socialize that. That's your job to share that with them, and you are the expert in your space. Another thing I would add into that, and that's kind of part of the narrative, is adding in competitive comparisons. So if you have access to competitive data. I know our main channel that we use is LinkedIn, and they do have some competitive metrics that you can pull. Um, that is a great way to round out your report and to share not just how you're doing in comparison to yourself in your past, quarters, but how you're doing in comparison to your competitors.
Mhm, mhm. I usually got questions when something's happening in terms of, let's say, engagement is decreasing. And usually I got questions from our ICP if I can give them some data regarding the industry. So competitors, it's really helpful. Industry also might be a great addition to improve the reporting. Maybe if the competitors, the numbers on competitors have a trend line, you can compare that trend line with the industry overall. And I think I have a question for you, Ryan, is what frustrates CMOs the most about reporting?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's usually a divide between what we think is happening and what they think is happening. And I think like a lot of what we're talking about, I mean, that we can't even get all of us to agree on the right time to report and how much and what to report, right? So I find that oftentimes it's a little bit dependent on just communicating with your leader. But that's a bit of a cop-out answer. So I do think that I tend to lean on over communication. I know that that can sometimes that has its pitfalls as well, but that's why I really, really, really try to share at least one like personal or social team win every day because I find that that just so often I don't want to say solves this problem, but kind of band-aids this problem around like, okay, well, maybe if I'm a little bit frustrated that engagement is tanking during December, right, which I'm sure we're all seeing, right? What are some of the other wins and what are some of the other ways that social can really step up? And like I guess like personally, I just find that so often if I sense that there's any potential place for frustration, where can we kind of make up for that? I know that doesn't directly answer your question of like what frustrates them the most. But I do often think that, right? Like there's a bit of a dichotomy of companies where we feel like leaders think that we're not doing enough. We feel like we're doing too much and leaders are asking us to do more. And like transparency and communication doesn't solve that, but I do find that it so often is a band-aid because if it's very clear that you're at least taking swings and taking risks and trying new things every day, then when somebody comes to you, hey, why didn't you try this? It's a little bit easier to say, well, I tried a bunch of other things.
Okay. Um, what's happening when, or what metrics social media should report when attribution is impossible? I think there are use cases when it's pretty hard to attribute that sales or attribute any sales to the social media, and what other metrics we should use to make a connection between social and sales, for example. Kate?
Sure. Yeah, I think when attribution isn't possible, when direct attribution isn't possible, I think one sort of like an underrated approach for social teams is to try to get social involved in other types of measurement around the company. I think CMOs trust metrics that are familiar to them, that they know how to work with from other areas of the business. There are some CMOs who have a lot of experience with social and a lot of expertise there who are better able to deal with social metrics as they are and who kind of understand in a more holistic way how they connect back to the business. But I think over the years, I've found it really, really fruitful in terms of proving the value of a program to do things like try to get questions about social into, say, like an NPS survey. Or if you're able to get your sales team to quantify some impact from social on, the sales process or the consideration process, that can be really valuable and that can kind of keep CMOs interested in your program, even if it's hard to get direct attribution numbers. I mean, it's also, some of that can be part of your content strategy if you haven't previously tried, driving to something that has a really tracked link and also making sure that you're doing everything you can to provide tracking and attribution. But on the flip side, I think it's also always worth partnering with other areas of the business to see how they're measuring awareness, because that's where I think social usually makes the biggest contribution. And so the people who measure awareness metrics in other parts of the business often have a way of kind of backing into how they think social growth is contributing to that or where social fits in to what they're doing. So that way the CMO is hearing a success story about social, not just from social, but from other metrics that they're already listening to and paying attention to.
Yeah. Um, I think leads or what people are saying in our sales calls can be also attributed to social media, for example. So as you said, not direct attribution, but we can find other places where we can ask people how they heard about us or how they find our brand. Maya, how social media teams present paid and organic performance together for CMOs?
Yeah, that one can be tricky. And I think it goes back to like something we've been talking about It basically is what the company's goals are, and then you have to look at the metrics that you have and how to align it to that. So from paid and from organic, putting them both together and where they can compare, putting them out there that way. But when they can't compare, kind of highlighting how they're unique and how they work together. I think that's probably the approach you need to have when you go into that. And honestly, I kind of am newer to like having even paid information. Like again, I've worked on really small teams when that wasn't really something I had access to, like budget to use to like boost and paid and all that kind of stuff. Or now I have like there's a whole paid team. And so now we're trying to find ways to work together and share how the data flows together and how our insights can go together again. So it's definitely a process, but I think again, it has to start with what's most important to the company and then how you show that through your data and showing how each is unique to their own pieces of like this puzzle that you're trying to put together for them. So I love like some of this stuff that we've like been learning and talking about, like how to make it all happen. And it's crazy because I was just like reporting the other day on like Black Friday metrics and Cyber Week and all that stuff. And my manager directly said to me, he's like, Maya, you're burying the lead. Like, I don't understand what you're telling me. And that was like a blow, because I'm definitely a storyteller. I'm like a yapper. And so that was like a kind of a gut check to be like, okay, I need to get like Melissa was kind of saying earlier, I need to get my story together. And I think my lesson I learned, I just will kind of share. It's like, okay, I need to put the number first so they're intrigued and they actually listen to me. And then I can explain how we got the number, how, organic worked with paid and we put it together, but they need to like be interested from the start to listen to my story I need to tell them. So I think that's kind of where it all has to start. Everyone has to know what's in it for them and how it's going to help them help all of us win at the end of the day. So
Can we or can you help us create a framework? I know storytelling was something that Melissa also mentioned, and how important it is to have a story for that report. If we had to talk about a framework that executives want to see or understand the story of that quarter or of that year, how would this framework look like?
yeah, I think Melissa, I'll pass it to you. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So as far as like creating a story around social performance, of course it depends if we're like talking at a high level, looking back at the quarter or looking back at like a specific campaign or something. But overall, I think we can use a framework that starts with what's like three pieces to it. So one being first, like what was the objective of whatever it was that you did, whether it be the campaign, a specific post you can tell a story about, or the past quarter, the past whole year. What were some of the objectives? What were you trying to do? And again, like tying it back to what CMOs really care about, which is like the really high level business objectives. Was it brand awareness? Was it driving traffic? Whatever it is. That's one. And then two, what was the outcome of what you actually did? So the campaign or the post, what were the metrics? How did those specifically tie to that objective? Um, and add context to all of this. So like that's the most important thing is context. Like we knew we wanted to do a campaign that made people aware. This is like from personal experience. Western Digital earlier this year separated from SanDisk, and we wanted to make sure as many people as possible, even outside of our specific customer base, but within other audiences, were aware of this big change that we're in an essence kind of a new company because we have a reshifted focus to just hard drives. And that means a whole different brand identity and everything along with it. So that was the goal. But then the actual outcome of a campaign that we did earlier this year as we and made those announcements, those I had specific metrics around that tied into that awareness metric being impressions and reach. We also wanted to look at engagement to people like actually take notice of this. And we also did a brand lift study, which is another thing that does require some dollars to be able to get in there. But if you have it and have the budget for it, on LinkedIn, you can do brand lift studies and determine really like the before and after a campaign and what were really the outcomes. So that's two out of the three: objective, outcome, and then opportunity, basically like the next steps. Like your CMO doesn't just want to know that necessarily the what happened, but they're always thinking about what are we going to do next. So um, how how are we going to take what we learned from that experience and then put it into our next campaign, into our next post, and how are we going to continue to improve?
Okay, so noted. The goal, the outcome, and the opportunity, and the story should be shaped. The report story should be shaped around these three key elements. So this is the last round of questions. I know that Ryan already gave some answers here in our chat. If you have other questions, last minutes to share them with us. Ryan, can you share an example of a social media report that changed the leadership decision? What do you think it worked?
Oh, 100%. So I pretty much changed my job with one thing that I did a couple months ago, where I ran an AI pilot where I did this super fancy workflow where I manually copied and pasted hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people and accounts that have liked and commented in the past like 30 to 60 days of our account of our executive posts and brand posts. This is probably half a day to a full day's work, very manual. And then I ran it through AI, did a little bit of enrichment, and ended up in a situation where I could go into HubSpot and look at, export all the companies that, were above a certain level and were ICP, and then use AI to say, okay, who are the leaders at these companies who have engaged in our content over the last 30, 60 days? And so I was able to give a super short, brief report. Hey, I used AI, ran a small pilot to see what leaders at our key like prospect accounts are engaging with our content. And I threw that together and was pretty much like, come and get it, sales. And the appetite was significantly higher than I expected. And since then, I've really seen a big shift in the way that we think about social, where it's like if we get one comment from someone, and that's something that we can actually send a follow-up from sales about that could potentially influence a deal that's worth dozens of thousands of dollars. Like no one really cares about impressions anymore. And so this also I find allows me to kind of I don't know, sort of diversify my investments in social a bit, right? Where if we're creating multiple different types of content that aren't necessarily just optimized for engagement or contents, but actually optimized for audience, and I'm able to prove that with just a few anecdotal comments or likes from key companies, like it's pretty cool. So, and I've actually been able to mostly automate that. It's still very much a work in progress, but the fact that now we're investing resources behind this is pretty promising.
Yeah, and I think sales is pretty happy with this.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing I can't recommend enough. Just like go make friends in sales. Like I find so often they're like, "Oh, you want to give us more information to close leads?" Awesome. We had no idea that the CEO of this company was commenting on our CEO's posts all the time, right? Like these disconnects are a lot bigger than I think we realize. And that's something that I've been able to find a lot of like low-hanging fruit style wins, right? At Zapier in my first year here is just by kind of just going and making friends and figuring out ways to kind of solve these problems together.
Yeah, yeah. And I think this is great because it's important for sales and marketing to be on the same table and find solution together. We have a question about how does everyone actually deliver the report? Do you recommend a meeting to be able to walk through metrics or just an email report with detailed explanations to be passed around among leadership? And yeah, I think this was all answered. Thank you, Melissa and Maya. Yeah, the last question that I have is, I think it's for everyone. What advice, if you have to give one piece of advice to every social media manager on reporting to CMOs, what would it will be? Maya?
Oh man, I had to get called first. I don't know. I didn't think on that one. I think maybe at the end of the day, and this is kind of just like a life thing, but I feel like be confident. So whatever you have to do to feel confident in that meeting, if you have to prep for like a week before, if you have to like know the exact like customer workflow and like to actually talk to people who did it, to feel confident, whatever you need to do, but feel confident what you're going to present. That should be step one. So that's my main piece of advice.
Yeah. Melissa?
It kind of ties into what you said, Maya, that to be confident and confident enough to go and ask like directly your CMO, because a lot of people in social are maybe more like earlier in their career, and it can be intimidating to talk to leadership. But if that's the case, maybe work directly with your manager to have a conversation with your marketing leadership and really like ask them questions. They want to tell you what they want you to do. Like you're not just there for nothing. Like so ask them directly what they're looking for. And it might not be, they may not give you the answer that's like, oh, I want these particular metrics, but they're going to say, I care most about brand perception. And then that's up to you to take that and find out what are the metrics that tie to that.
Yeah.
I love that, Melissa. Going a little bit further on that, like I find this is a little silly, but I do mean it. Like this is all a lot easier if you're able to give your CMO a viral post or two. If you help an executive go viral once or twice, like you're gonna get a little less heat on your next couple of ones that don't, you know what I mean? So I have found that actually taking like investing company time into growing the personal accounts of our executives has been one of the most valuable things that we've done, not only for myself and for building the relationship internally, but externally as well, because we see that consistently they outperform our brand content like a ton, right? I also find that like for better and worse, and I'm sure everyone here that works in social can experience this, right? Like 12 times a week, someone comes to me and is like, you work in social media. I'm on social media. I have ideas, right? I'm sure you all experience some version of this, okay? And yes, that can be kind of annoying and frustrating if unless they're from leadership, right? Then in that case, that might be a really good way for you to bolster a one-on-one relationship, right? If they see something, you just need to figure out how to manage that in a realistic way, because I have actually found some really fun projects that I've been able to get quickly off the ground because leadership was like, I saw this. What do you think about this? And that was it. And I was able to say, actually, I think that's really cool. And I have an idea. And they say, try it. And now, look, now I'm able to show that I can take something from ideation to execution that came out of simply a one-on-one message with leadership because they thought of me as, the social person or someone who could potentially get an idea like this done, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I would add one thing to Melissa's comment, which I think is right on, which is that as you try understand the questions that your executives are trying to answer across the business, you need to be communicative and forthright about whether you can answer those questions with the tools and data that you have. Like I have had so many times leadership asking me for social listening answers when I only had social analytics tools. And for somebody who doesn't do this for a living, the fact that we're able to analyze, the fact that I'm able to see what people said about our posts doesn't mean that I have the same ability to say what's being said on the internet about our company. And so I think you need to I think you need to manage the flow of information and be clear about what is missing from your reporting and where your tooling may not support actually answering the questions that are a priority. And along with that, I always say this, but provide numbers for context and provide context for numbers. We spend so much time on our channels. We know if something did well. Like, I don't even mean that in just vibes. I mean, like, I can tell if a post is doing well in the first couple of minutes, even or certainly in the first couple of hours, if we've over-indexed in some way, just because I'm so used to seeing the full set of numbers. But someone who isn't as familiar with your data isn't going to have that. So you need to prove out with numbers that this did really well, but at the same time, it doesn't help most leaders to just hear we hit 4% engagement rate on this post if they don't know that your usual engagement rate is 1.5%. So make sure that you're always considering how much your audience knows about what you're talking about and don't assume knowledge on the part of your listener. And don't assume even potentially memory of the last time you gave this report a month ago. It is always, always helpful to add additional context and to make clear what data we would need in order to get a more complete picture to answer the questions that are high priority.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's important to understand the context of your CMO. So it's not the CMO doesn't ask questions just because he or she has this power. It because he needs this data and the context and the numbers to show to the CEO, for example. So and to show that the budget it's working and this channel drive results for the business overall. So it's important to understand that the CMO also have a context, need some numbers and make sure you write the story based on the goals. You add the outcome and the context and what's next, because you make its life the CMO life much more easier. Thank you so much for spending 15 minutes together and talking about top metrics that CMO actually cares in reporting. We discuss a lot about how attribution is important, whether it's direct attribution or not, the competition, the industry reports. We discuss about the framework for storytelling and how we set realistic expectations of what executive wants to see in the social media reporting. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you, Melissa, Maya, Kate, and Ryan, to be with us today. And yeah, see you next year.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
This was so great.
everyone.
Thanks again, folks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.